Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Gary Allen. I'll be your host today. And today we're talking with Lisa Waligorski. We'll introduce in just a moment. And she's going to tell us some stories about case studies of how she's helped make her firms more efficient. I've had opportunity to talk with Lisa, and she is just very compelling the way she talks about making firms better. So this webinar is for the benefit, is approved for ALA, Association of Legal Administrators credits. So those of you who are ALA members can take advantage of this. Those of you who aren't, I always like to give a plug for the organization when I do that, because I think it's such a value to the legal administrators who are members. And in an exciting twist, today Lisa is a newly appointed national board member for ALA. So Lisa, would you like to talk for just a minute about what the benefits that you get out of the organization?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be where I am today, I don't think, without ALA and what it's done for me. The peer connections, the people that you can talk to, the people that understand what you're going through whenever you feel like you're alone and you're not alone. Those are the big things that I wish that I would have known whenever I didn't know about ALA in the very beginning. Once I found it, I have tried my hardest to utilize it to the most at the local level and at the international level, because you can talk to people all day long and you can find out so many things about what other firms are doing and what you could bring back to your firm. You can't bring everything back and it's never going to be cookie cutter. And I say that a lot, but it's great to be able to talk to people and understand what they're doing. And a lot of times you get ideas that spring off of that that you can bring back to your firm to help your firm.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. If
You're welcome.
anybody is interested in more information about joining ALA, just type ALA in the chat and we'll put you in touch with the appropriate folks. Awesome. So when I start these, I like to start with my story so you have a little bit of context of what we're talking about. So I was a 35-year practicing attorney in a mid-sized firm. I just retired this last February. Um, I practiced in several firms early in my career and actually experienced a lot of pain from bad business practices in several of those firms, including two that imploded while I was in them. One of them leaving me with no job on a Saturday afternoon and a 6-month-old baby to feed. And all of that has given me a real passion to help make law firms into better businesses, because once I got past that, my career was much more enjoyable and financially remunerative as well. So um, I want everybody to be able to enjoy that. And along the way, I founded Lean Law, which is a legal billing software company. I'm really excited to introduce Lisa Waligorski, who is our guest today. She is the executive director at Newmeyer Dillian in Newport Beach, California. And she joined their firm as the director of finance in 2015 and became the executive director in 2017. She has there and other places over 20 years of leadership experience in law firm administration. She is a real advocate. I've heard this of a culture of accountability and profitability across all levels of the firm. So we're very much in sync on that point. And as I mentioned, she's an ALA national board member. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Gary. I'm glad to be here. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. So what we're going to try to make sure everybody understands as part of the presentation today, one is just how do you identify key areas of inefficiency in law firms' operations? And you'll hear that through our case studies. We're going to learn how to implement proven techniques to improve workflow and reduce bottlenecks. Lisa has a lot of direct experience in this. And then how to utilize practical tools and best practices to manage firm resources more effectively. Now, before we get into that, I like to just sort of give a little bit of context of where I come from in terms of law firm financial performance, because I think it lends a little context to this conversation. So I call it the $8 million difference. And that's the difference between what a lawyer can earn in an average firm and a lawyer can earn in a best-in-class firm that is achieving top levels of financial performance over the course of their career. And, you know, I know this because I've lived it, and have seen it in myself and dozens of my partners in my current firm. And it really boils down to three things. One of them, the first, which are the efficient processes, productive people, and a strong product market fit. So let's talk about each of those for just a minute as we dive in here. Um, I feel like the process is the place to start in a firm. It lays a really solid foundation for the other things that you need to do. And to get your processes right, you essentially have to map the workflows that you want in your firm. How do you want to work? And get the critical things done in the firm in the areas of, both the work that you produce as a law firm, your financial workflows, as well as marketing and sales, if that's an important part of what your firm does. And I'm a real advocate of building on the industry standards. You're all using Microsoft. Many of you are using Microsoft 365. There's a huge amount of power in that suite that you should take full advantage of as your first priority. From a financial standpoint, small to mid-sized firms, the foundation is QuickBooks in very many of these firms. 85% of small businesses in the US use QuickBooks. And then you need to add some legal customization to those. That's the sort of thing that Lean Law does. There are other options, but to take those core tools, customize them for legal applications, and then add any niche tools that you need. Once you have those workplace flows in place, the important thing is to communicate. Make sure that they're being used throughout the firm. My firm had the potential to be cowboys on a lot of things, so there was some challenges there, but just make sure that the smooth workflows you've created are working throughout the firm. Turning really quickly to productive people. I, I think culture is really important to develop, having the right sort of productivity in your firm. And, Lisa may talk about this in some of the things she talks about, but, it's really important to have accountability as part of your culture, and also productivity. You want people who really want to work, are excited about their work. Your compensation system needs to align with that. So you want alignment on both accountability as well as the productivity that you want from people. And finally, succession, because who wants to work for a law firm that's going to end when the founder retires? The last part of it is a strong product market fit. And a lot of law firms fall down on this. And the lack of quality work is really what holds them back financially. And the key is to listen to your customers. And there's a process called design thinking, which is very helpful to go through as you think about how this works. And it starts with listening. And then that leads you to the right kind of offering and pricing, and then the right type of marketing for your practice, which is going to be very different if you're a B2B firm versus a B2C firm. So at a really high level, that's it. It's really quite simple. That's why we put it simple with 3 Ps for processes, people, and product. And I hope that gives you some sense of what it takes, and that it is achievable for every law firm to dramatically improve their financial performance if they're not already there. All right. So, and finally, I wanted to let you know that you're watching what's part of a series of what we call best in class webinars, which teach everything you need to know about how to achieve best in class production. We've had quite a number of these over the last few months, and this series continues throughout 2025 with 2 webinars a month, which will be, generally speaking, on the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. So here's the schedule for the first half of 2025. And you'll also get a brochure after the webinar, which will show you how to sign up and tell you what's on the future agenda. All right. With that, one last thing, which is we also will receive a financial report card, which will give you some idea of how you're doing on the financial performance of the firm. And I'm always happy to take questions on any of these things. So my email is in the webinar. You feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So let's dive into the meat of this, which is some case studies of law firm efficiency. And let's jump into this. Lisa, could you just, to get us started, give us a quick rundown on kind of what you've done in your career so we can have some context on your efforts to improve efficiency?
Sure. I started out actually in law firms as a receptionist and continued my education at night while I became a legal secretary back in the day, and then a paralegal. Whenever I finished my bachelor's degree, I knew I had always wanted to go into management. So I got my first position as a controller at a law firm and was nowhere near ready for this position. However, I became ready very quickly, and after a few years, that firm had kind of reorganized and became smaller. So I became the office administrator. So that was my first full office administrator position. I stayed there for about 7 years, and then actually went and had like my own accounting firm for a little bit. And they gave me the accounting as a base from the law firm. And I used that and prepared taxes and kind of built the business up for about 4 or 5 years at night and on the weekends and doing all that stuff, only to realize whenever I did it for through the first tax season that it really wasn't what I was looking for, and ended up just not doing that and going back to a law firm. So my love is definitely at these law firms. Was at my next law firm as the COO for the next 7 or 8 years, and then I came here. And I've been at Newmeyer Dillion for a little bit over 9 years now. Again, Gary had said started as director of finance, was in that position for the first couple of years, and then went right back to my old position as executive director. And I've been doing that now since then, since 2017. So
That's
that's really it.
Yeah, it's such a great story of really going from the ground up. In my own law firm, the current managing partner started as a runner, believe it or not. Went to law school, came back, and went all the way to the top from there. So you have a bit of the same story. Love
Yeah,
it.
and I like the you kind of learn. Now look, I can't say that when I was a legal secretary or paralegal that it would be anything like it is today to be in those positions, but at least you do understand the relationships with the attorneys because those haven't changed as much. So you
Hmm.
kind of understand where people are coming from and how it was one-on-one whenever I did it, but you understand the like how the attorneys get very attached to different LAAs and paralegals, and you understand more of the relationships.
Hmm. Hmm. That's fantastic. Let's see. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We at least will get them to them at the end, and we may jump into some of them as we go along. Um, so let's get into a case study here. So start by telling us about one of the most transformative efficiency projects you've led. So what was the problem, and what first steps did you take to solve it?
So there's been so many, and a lot of these different case studies kind of cross over with each other. So I tried to
Sure.
make them specific and separate. The biggest one that caused the most disruption in my current law, it is at my current law firm. This one is right before COVID. Probably it was like July of 2019. We rebranded. And we
Mm,
had been basically mostly construction defect. We had some other smaller areas of law that we practice in, but our biggest clients were developers. And that's where most of our income had come from for years.
mm,
And
mm.
we needed to rebrand because that work was dissipating. So we ended up needing to rebrand. And when we did it right before COVID. So the perfect time, right? You don't know it's coming. But one of the things that we didn't anticipate, and probably should have, but we didn't, you live and you learn, is we used to have to collect a lot of money from a few people. And
Wow.
now we're having to collect money from a smaller amount of money from a lot of people.
So what did you
And
rebrand to
we
from?
actually went to full service business litigation,
Ah, okay.
which was kind of going back. Apparently, like way before I was here, they were full service business litigation and then developed this niche business within construction defect, became known for it. And that's what they did for years then until we went back to full service business litigation.
Yeah, that it actually kind of sends chills down my spine because I was a land use lawyer, and during the 2008 crash, I had 10,000 acres of projects sitting on my desk on
Ooh,
the end of November 2008. They had all stopped by the end of December 2008. It was
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it was a rough time. I was at my other
Yeah.
law firm when the whole recession happened, and it was you definitely had to think on your feet of what you were doing. Our firm was a mid-sized law firm in St. Louis who had a couple of attorneys who had come from a very large law firm, and they just had stuck there, and we ended up gaining business during that because of the high
Mm,
prices and people moving around. So,
right.
but we had also a huge banking segment. And of course, there was no banking. And so, it was a rough time for everybody during that time.
Yeah. Yep. I had to revive my environmental law practice at that point. Was
See?
able to do it.
Yep.
So let's talk about this the switch from the construction law firm to the general business firm. What was your role in making that happen? And
Uh,
how did that play out throughout the firm? Because that's a huge shift that you made.
it was. It actually went, we had a director of marketing that spent a ton of time with an actual committee, and I was part of the committee. So moving everything and seeing the segments that we were actually in at the time, because we had government, land use, environmental. So we had that as a group.
Hmm.
We had labor, we had some business, just like full service business litigation. We have a small transactional group. So we were trying to build on the segments that we have and outsource for maybe some partners that had different areas of law that would tie in. And so we looked at bringing in other people, and we did, that could do other things. Like we have insurance law. And so that was a big component. And that kind of went hand in hand with the construction defect and where a lot of it came from. Then when we built on that with other partners that came in. So and then we
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
took it forward. Like we were really trying to build and have people come in that had different areas of law and build off of those.
Hmm. And
And we
how
did
long?
have some changes, like like we had to downsize a little bit.
Right.
Uh, and then we downsized a little bit more with COVID. It became leaner and meaner.
Hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, how long was the dip before, you started to, get the firm working in a way that was, effective after that?
I think it's kind of harder to quantify because of COVID.
COVID, right.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean it definitely came back up during COVID. I'd say a couple of years.
Yeah. 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 And is the firm better as a result? Do you
Yeah,
think?
much
Okay,
much more diversified because you think about it, it's kind of have all your eggs in one basket.
right.
Right,
Yeah,
and I've seen that before. At my last firm, we had a giant segment, that was based in one area and then lost that segment and had to figure out, "Okay, we've lost this particular area. N Now what are we going to do?" So it just it happens. It's something you hopefully can try to prepare for, but sometimes you can't. Nobody could prepare for the pandemic.
right, right, exactly. Well, it does have some, it resonates with me because when I moved from California to Idaho to start my practice, I was an environmental lawyer entirely. And because of political changes, the environmental practice dried up. I had to figure out something else. And when I did, it was like, oh, let's go into land use, and that's also got its own cycles. And so,
Mhm.
what I learned is you have to be able to balance those things and had to keep both of them going in a small market like we are. You couldn't be the expert on the rule against perpetuities like you might be able to be in Los Angeles, and always have enough work there. So yeah, the ability to hedge a little bit can be really important depending on your market. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, so let's move to another one. So every big transformation has its challenges. So could you walk us through a project where you faced resistance or obstacles, and how did you overcome them, and what was the outcome?
Sure. So when I got here, we had outsourced like our file management, our records management, and reception in all three of our offices. So we had the one of the first things that happened when I was director of finance is it was getting ready to renew what was like a 5-year term that we had with a company that was outsourced that provided all these services to us.
Hmm.
And we were, making sure, the first thing that I'm gonna look at is, the provider that we had currently came in and they were offering us a deal of, we're gonna give you the same people, we're gonna, give you all new copiers, and we're gonna charge you like we're gonna give you like $100,000 discount, and here's what it's gonna be. So they brought in a proposal and they were going over it with me, the executive director, and the managing partner. And while I'm just quiet in the beginning, and you wouldn't know that if you knew me because I talk a lot, but I'm quiet. I'm going to listen. And I'm listening to everything they're saying because I'm brand new and I'm not exactly sure what they're doing. So I'm reading through the proposal as they're going through it and everything. And one of the things that I really think that everybody should look at is don't yeah, $100,000 discount sounded like a huge discount when you're talking about $5 million over 5 years. And
Hmm.
you're like, and you got 12 people involved, and you want to make sure you're paying your people that even if they're outsourced, they got to be making money, or you're not going to find quality people, and there might be a lot of turnover. So you're looking at that. You don't know what the best practices are. You haven't had an opportunity yet to see, okay, the things that we needed 5 years ago, are those still the same things that we need now? Well, one of the things was the copiers, and it had listed out that we had like 16 copiers between the three offices at that point in time. And obviously, you'd need way less copiers at this point. So, and even then, I knew that we needed less, but they listed the utilization rates. And they were
Mm.
saying, okay, we're going to renew this. We're going to have, these 16 copiers. We're going to replace all them. And was like raising my hand and saying, hey, the utilization on almost every one of these is 20%. Why do we have
Mm.
all these copiers? And the ones that are even in office services that they're using fully in Newport Beach, which is our biggest office, they're only at 50%. What's happening?
Mm.
So I, really want you guys to think about, what you're doing, and if the things that we, the service like continuity and disruption. So that
Hmm.
was a big thing that we had to deal with if we were going to move away from this place to go to another place. Um, People building personal relationships with the people who were actually, that were outsourced, that were here on site at this company because they had been here for quite a few years. And if we
Hmm.
moved to a different company, okay, what does the contract say and how much are we going to have to pay for these people if we want to keep them? Because there's always some sort of clause that you would need to look at to say, okay, if it's going to be X amount of dollars for you to be able to keep our people. So you'd always want to look at
Right.
like that. In this case, it was 50% of everybody, like a yearly salary for each person. So now
Wow.
we're going to have to be
Hmm.
strategic in who we're keeping, and we're going to have to think about the fact, are they doing a good job? How much is this going to disrupt? So there was a lot of staff pushback. There was also technology. Is this place going to use the same type of technology? Are the people going to understand the technology? And you've also got the devil that you know versus the devil that you don't know. And what's going to go on with that. So those were the biggest things that we had pushback on.
Interesting. So apart from copiers, what was this vendor providing?
Also the all of the people who were in office services,
Ah,
reception, and records. What we
got
found
it.
is whenever
Okay.
we completely changed this, I started looking at, okay, we don't really have anybody who runs our errands. What if we could find a way to build errands into this and even had them provide the vehicle to run the errands?
Mm-hmm.
I ended up doing that. I ended up cutting the people just a little bit. We didn't have very much that we needed to do. We did not buy new copiers at all. We did switch providers. So we
Mm,
ended up switching. We didn't buy new copiers. We were able to keep those copiers, which were completely paid for over the next 5 years with just some maintenance costs because they were so underutilized.
wow.
And we were
Mm-hmm.
able to find different ways to save. And then whenever COVID happened, I ended up bringing, because the offices all ended up downsizing, we ended up doing build outs, most of them during COVID, and downsizing because we just didn't need the space because so many people were working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to bring back first reception. And like, because we didn't have as many people, there's no reason to outsource them. We can manage them ourselves. Then I brought back records. And then when the term actually was up on the lease, then I brought the office services people back in. But I had negotiated that we were only going to pay $5,000 or whatever it was per person if we brought
Right.
them in instead of half of their salary for a year.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Wow. So you must have saved a bunch of money on
we
that,
did, we
on
did
that.
whenever we did it initially, we were
Yeah.
with all the new things we built in, we were gonna save over, I think it was like $1.5 million over 5 years.
Wow. Wow. I hope you got a nice bonus check. That
They're very helpful to me.
you're exactly.
Yep.
That's a really great story of, just down in the nitty gritty of
Yeah.
your overhead, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Um, just talking about overhead for a second, is is that something in my firm that was very transparent? Here's
Mhm.
the overhead you pay, and it was really valuable because it got everybody's eyes on overhead and sort of got us all going in the same direction rather than people, trying to save their little perk here and there and having to deal with that top down. What's your culture as far as that goes? Is there, in terms of keeping your costs low, is that you have a top down, bottom up, or some combination?
It's really more of a, it's kind of in the middle. It's kind of in the
Okay.
middle, but more bottom up than anything because I think that it's important for, like, I don't want to make all of those decisions. I could have like an overall of what I believe that we need to spend as a whole, but then I have to listen to all the managers to understand fully if I'm off out of line or not.
Right.
So, and then they're also listening to the people who are working, with them as well. What we found that's really, really helpful is, well, first of all, I worked my very first job as a controller was at a class action firm for plaintiffs that was extremely successful back in like the early 2000s.
Hmm.
And I still treat that place, I think from my upbringing, like we have no money. And that's kind of like, because they would come to me and say, okay, we've got this coming in. How much money do you need for overhead for the next 18 months maybe, because we don't think
Right.
we have anything this big coming in
Oh, that's
18
really
months,
interesting. Yeah, because
right?
cash flow is the problem always in those
And then
firms.
you
Yeah.
cross tax years, which is a completely different problem. But
Mm,
yeah, it was really interesting. Well, the last two firms in management have always been hourly billing for the most part.
right.
And so now what I do is I teach the managers the way that I want them to look at things. And I think it's really cool that I see them teaching their employees to do the same thing.
Fantastic.
Because
Interesting.
we just actually had a case where we were able to um, like make a case for a person who's in office services to get a bigger bonus at the end of this year,
Hmm.
because he had single-handedly changed the way that we purchase our like our office supplies and our kitchen supplies, and just kept looking at it, and saved us like $25,000 in Newport Beach.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And that was awesome. And it was
Mm-hmm.
something that he took ownership of. So I feel that it's very important that every employee feels like they can take ownership of things,
Hmm.
and that they're not micromanaged, because nobody needs that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
if you're micromanaging
Mm.
people, you don't have the right people, because everybody needs to be able to spend time on this same initiative, which would be making sure that you're spending the right amount of money. Look, it's penny wise and pound foolish too. I
Yep.
don't I want to try to find money where I could try to put it back into the firm in a different way, or figure out a way to give it to our employees and make them more successful. And
Yeah.
that just helps the firm as a whole. At the end of the day, if I do stuff like that, we end up putting more money in the owner's pockets at the end of the year.
Perfect. Yeah. I love that. I love the way you're talking about that and that cultural part of this to get everybody, on the same page. And so that you don't have to, you know, say, okay, now you can need to go look for that $25,000 savings.
Mhm.
That's baked in. I love it.
It is, it
Yeah.
is. And the other thing is, and I think you made a great point, Gary, you said cultural. Every firm I've been at, the culture's different.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
you've got to understand what the owners are looking for, and then figure out this part doesn't change. You obviously should be having every single one of your people looking at that. Everybody's looking at it and
Hmm.
trying to find a way to be able to be more efficient. If they can't find a way to save us money like the office services people, they're trying to find ways, and we gamify things to try to make them more efficient.
Nice, nice. So let's turn to technology, which often
Mhm.
comes up as a big factor in efficiency. So could you share a case study where the introduction of a particular tech tool or platform really improved your efficiency, and what made that tool so impactful?
We have a few different ones that came to mind, but the one that I want to focus on today is adding, um, we have Adirant for
Hmm.
our accounting software, and adding Bill Blast on top of that, because we have so much e-billing. So for
Ah,
those of you who aren't familiar with e-billing, or have a lot of that, there's lots of different platforms, right? That you're logging into each one of these individual platforms and uploading your bills into that in leads format. Well, we have 10 of them now that we were
mm,
uploading into, and Bill Blast is something that puts all of that into one place for us.
mm,
And we can upload just from Bill Blast, and we can get into all of the platforms. And there's different software out there. This is just the one that we chose.
right.
Um,
Okay.
but it also tracks everything then. And it tracks all the appeals, and it tracks all the discounts, and it tracks everything to where we can see it all in one place, and make sure that we're constantly reaching out to the client or reaching out to the partner, explaining what has happened or why it happened, so they don't have to weed through all their emails to find things. The other thing that it's done is we email tons of bills as well, more emails than we do e-bills. We
Hmm.
didn't have anywhere to track that except for making sure we were emailing a distribution list to have everything together, but it wasn't necessarily organized. And it's a lot. If you've got 500 a month emails that are going out with bills, that's a lot to try to keep it organized.
Right.
That's
Right.
now all tracked for us. And we can press a button and email everything at once. It can all
Hmm.
go at once, and we're not doing each individual email and you're sending 500 out.
Interesting.
The
Yeah.
analytics are huge too, because
Hmm.
I can look at, and the controller can look at deduction analytics, AR analytics, like specialist analytics, like who's doing the most billing and who's having the most things rejected and why is it rejected, and is there anywhere where somebody can learn what,
Right.
if they're not doing it correctly, but it really kind of throws
Hmm.
that stuff in your face.
Interesting. So let me step back for just a minute and understand how how big are your offices and how big is your firm, just so we
Okay.
know.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have 3 offices. The
yeah,
bulk of the people are in Newport Beach. We have around 60 attorneys.
got it. Okay. And how many head count all told,
I have
attorneys plus staff?
47 between management and staff.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm. So that is you're less than 1 to 1. That's pretty efficient.
Yeah. So
Interesting. Okay. And you're fairly complex operation then. So
we
yeah.
are, and very needy, right? I mean, and as every other law firm I work for,
Right.
like they're very needy in a good way, but very needy. And you try. I believe in a culture of client service. I believe that everybody here is my client, and that's the way I treat everybody here. And I teach that mentality throughout the entire firm. So they're needy, but we're very like white glove whenever it comes to trying to service them, because the whole idea is for people to be able to stay on task and do what they are here to do.
Right. Right. So how much time and time is money. So how much did you save with using Bill Blast and those kinds of tools?
Well, it's new. Okay, so
Okay.
but let me tell you what we have done. We've done it for the
Yeah.
last 3 months. This
Hmm.
is 3 months that we've been billing through Bill Blast. We had lost a biller. A biller had left the
Hmm.
firm. We have not replaced that biller. The accounting manager last month, we had before beginning of the year, we had 3 billers and
Hmm.
the accounting manager who's also in there, and then somebody in AP and somebody in AR. Right now, the accounting manager and 1 biller are handling the billing and doing a great job. I would want 1 more biller. So I think we're going to be down at least 1 biller, but we might make it our what we like to do is try to hire like a billing assistant and give that person, train them internally and give them an opportunity to become a specialist and let them have upward mobility. So more than
Got it.
likely we've got this one, we got the accounting manager who has been doing billing and the billing specialist, and we'll have a billing assistant. That's already saving us money on people. It wasn't something that we thought about, but it is
Right.
happening. We believe it's going to help more with collections than it is anything, and making sure that we're always studying, okay, what were these deductions, because we didn't have a great eye on that because we didn't have any type of tool to have a great eye on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And where are they hitting us with making deductions, and how can we make that better? So with the billing assistant in place, that person could help become a specialist, and then the accounting manager could spend more time on seeing where we get hit and working at the analytics, and so can the controller and I, because we're the ones that look at the analytics now.
Got it. Got it. So that's the sort of thing you see when you can really change a core workflow in a
Mhm.
firm, is like head count changes, that it and people can be put on more productive things, and that adds up fast if you're talking about, a full-time employee for a year that you
It
don't need
it
anymore.
really does.
Yeah.
And one of the people I try very hard to do, because we're small enough to where I know all of our employees and I know them
Right.
very
Hmm.
well. And the one person who's in there that has just become a billing specialist, we moved him from a different department. He is trying to get a degree in like a data analytics type of thing. And
Hmm.
so my hope would be to keep him in line with what he really likes and what he wants to go to school for, is to get him involved in all these analytics, and he probably could spend a lot of time in it and do stuff in the future. So I'm always thinking about where people can move and what they can do in the future based on their skill set and what they like.
Nice. And that's a great segue to our next question, which is about sometimes efficiency isn't just about processes, but it's about people. So
Mhm.
can you give us an example, and maybe you just did, where a change in team
Yeah.
roles or responsibility made a big difference in the productivity?
Well, the biggest thing that I saw was in the accounting department when I came as the director of finance. About a year or so after I got at the firm, I thought we need to try to improve our processes. We had the same people, nobody had left, but I,
Hmm.
I didn't know the people very well because I spent the first year buried in all the finances. And the accounting manager and I decided we were going to um, we were going to like look at the processes and see what people were doing. We knew that we had issues where there weren't a lot of people that were cross-trained, and that's
Hmm.
super important. And the biggest thing that brought it to my mind was we had one person in accounting who was opening all the matters and running the conflict checks as well as making the daily deposits. Now, these are things that have to be done daily. There's nothing that can wait, right?
Right.
You don't have a ton of time in accounting, but you might have a little bit more time. People want their files open so they can bill on them, and people want the money in the bank.
Hmm.
So I'm like, we need to split that up. So we need to figure out what we're doing and how we can do it. So we had what we called a pizza process lunch party. And we were like trying to explain, there were 6 people in accounting at the time. And we were like, okay, we did a presentation that we had seen at ALA National with regard to legal lien waste and trying to make sure that we could come up with some different things that they could look at themselves and take ownership of, and some things we might be able to help them with. So we had the presentation, we did like a process map and tried to figure it out.
Mm.
We talked to them individually at their desks about their processes and said, hey, when you go back to your desk, here's some homework. If there's something at your desk where you're thinking, this is terrible, why am I doing this? And it might be everything, but
Hmm.
if it's just a couple of things, tell us what they are and let's see if we can make them better. And then we talked to them about their likes and what they really liked. And then we ended up moving everybody around and changing positions. Like one person stayed and did the same exact thing, but most other people had some shifted responsibilities. And some of the things that we saw at people's desks were, it's like, okay, I do this spreadsheet, and they showed us the spreadsheet and we're looking at the spreadsheet and we're like, well, who's looking at this spreadsheet? Like nobody's looking. It was something that happened like 10
Yeah.
years ago where we didn't have the technology in place with reporting.
Ah,
And I said, who asked you for the spreadsheet? Well, nobody. I'm like, is anybody looking at it? We checked audit trails and nobody's looking at it. I'm like, stop doing it. Let's see what happens. And nothing
right. Hmm.
happened. Gary, nothing happened. The other thing
Right.
was just understanding technology. And we had like 100-page bills from our provider for service, for like filing service, like if people were
Mm.
getting filed. So we'd have like 100-page invoices and they were all electronic. So we would scan them in, but then nobody knew that you could do OCR and you could actually search them. You could make it searchable.
Oh, wow.
So they're
Yeah.
going through page by page to attach bills to an e-bill
Mm.
and not
Hmm.
searching it. And I'm like, I'm going to lose my mind. So
Yeah.
just figuring that stuff out. So what the things that came out of it were, after we switched everything around, we definitely kept them very involved as to what we were doing. But the big things that came out of it were faster turnaround times, right?
Hmm.
Less
Hmm.
errors. People were doing what they liked and they seemed to be wanting to do more of it. It
Right.
streamlined the processes. It increased the communication in the department, which was
Hmm.
not something that we thought about it doing. But now people are like talking to each other, and it got all the cross training that we needed. And then we aligned work with the proper people who were interested in it that could do it. And look, I know that not everybody has this opportunity, but that's just the opportunity that we had with it.
Yeah. It's really interesting how that fit into is largely a workflow uh,
Yes,
modification
it was
project.
huge. It was huge.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Yeah.
thought with people. We've done it
But
several times since then, but that was the first one. And that's the one that's closest to my heart.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and getting the right people doing what they like, I really that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Um, so we just talked about people in the context of workflow redesign. Are there any other workflow redesigns that you've implemented that surprised you or really had some jaw-dropping results in terms of efficiency?
I think the biggest thing for us, we've really tried to make all of our onboarding and offboarding electronic now. We hadn't done that
Mm.
until the past couple of years.
Is this
And so,
client onboarding or
I'm sorry, I should have clarified employee.
employee
Employee
offboarding? Okay.
onboarding. And
Mhm.
then the same thing with setting up for, like, if you roll out your new employee handbook and you
Right.
need, them to sign off on it, and doing everything through DocuSign across the board. Being able to use that, of course, with all the clients, but shift it around and try to use it internally if
D-
you can.
So do you use a tool like Gusto or something like that for onboarding or offboarding, or what
We
do you?
we do.
Okay.
We have iSolved.
Okay.
So that's where we do all of our payroll. That's where people clock in and out. That's where all our benefits are held. So that's
Hmm.
our HR IS system.
Okay. Interesting. So let's talk about communication. So
Mhm.
that can often be a bottleneck. Do you have a case study where improving the way that you communicated, either between teams or with clients, helped improve your efficiency?
So one of the things that I started at my old firm and I asked if we could do it here is I kept seeing, whenever it comes to the associate and paralegal ranks, that the same things that were being written down off bills every month continued to happen because nobody was educating them and
Mm,
nobody was letting them know. I'm like, why does this keep happening? And I would end up talking to the partners whenever I was trying to collect AR or looking at all these write downs and approving things, and say, hey, why did you write this down? And they said, well, this narrative was terrible. And I'm like, well, can we just teach they did the work. Can we teach
right.
the person how to rewrite the narrative? Or it looks like they were just pushing a button and that's all it took. Well, that's a rewrite of a narrative, to where it
Hmm.
doesn't look like somebody just pushed a button and had time. And a lot of that started with like e-discovery. And I'm like, yeah, they're not just pushing a button. That's not what's happening.
Right.
Let's talk to them about it. Nobody was doing that. So I asked if we could start doing presentations. Like, I could help the paralegals, but can we have some sort of business of law presentation for the associates? And that would help them in the future for what they were doing. And let's talk about realization and utilization and leverage. We don't have to give them any finite numbers about what we're doing here, but we can
Hmm.
talk to them about how our firm is organized as a business and what that means. We can talk about profitability, expenses, speed of collections, what it means, like the realization part. We could focus on with regard to, hey, you've got your billable hours, but now there's a part about being billed, and then there's a part about, like what we're collecting. The billable to build is the part that we really want you to focus on. And we're going to try to give you some tools no matter what they are. At my old firm, the tool was me giving them like spreadsheets and information on what was billable versus billed. And there has to be something in your culture to where they could then reach out to the partner and ask them. Sometimes that's doable, sometimes that's not.
Right.
Here,
Hmm.
it's a dashboard. I actually have a
Mm,
dashboard where all the associates can go in, they can see their own stuff, and they can just ask the questions. And then
nice.
talk to them about finders and minders and grinders. And, everybody's got a place, right? And what
Yeah.
could it be? But and then we also, our cultural pillars are like, trust, respect, and loyalty, and
Mm,
those are part of everything. And so talking about those and what they mean, so whatever your cultural pillars are as well. And what I found was, all of that stuff that I used to have problems with, now we've kind of get ahead of it. So when an associate starts now, I just do the presentation for them if they're not at the beginning of the year. If they're at the beginning of the year, we have the refresher in January with the managing partner and me,
hmm.
and
Hmm.
we're the ones that do those. But I thought that was a really cool way to communicate, and it really did make a difference.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that just that education about how law firm really works. That was a big eye opener for me when I joined my final firm. It was
Mhm.
not present in most of the other ones. And it's just you just have to know how it really works if you're going to be a partner in a law firm for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does. And like I had said, to other people, I'm like, trying also from the partner ranks to make sure that they understand.
Mm-hmm.
That being a partner is different, and some of the things that they don't seem surprised, because I've definitely had partners, brand new partners that came up through the ranks that have come to me and said, different things about, I didn't understand. So we actually have a partner orientation, and these, other than showing them that they're going to be paid differently because we're an LLP, other than going through all of that and, the tax advisor stuff and having them talk to their tax advisor and all that good stuff, also just kind of say, different things that they can expect with regard to communications. And hey,
Mm-hmm.
you might see something like this that you didn't see as an associate, and you're going to be seeing this type of financial information about yourself. You're going to get something a little different as a financial snapshot. And hey, more information is going to be provided to you then, because you're going to have dollars associated with the hours now that you could see on the dashboard. Just really
Mm-hmm.
trying to educate them as partners, just to help them out as well.
Got it. Got it. So talk to me about a project that didn't go the way you wanted it to.
We don't have enough time for all the projects that I had that did not go the way that
Just
I
one,
wanted.
just
Okay,
one.
just one. Okay, I got a doozy for you. So, uh, 2020, 2020, 2021, 2021, we were going to downsize our Walnut Creek office.
Mm,
And we just needed to do it with the changes that we had made. The lease was going to be up, and the changes we made with regard to like the business that we had, and then we have COVID involved, right?
right.
So we're working on everything, thinking that we're just going to be able to downsize and stay where we're at. And then the building gets sold.
Mm,
So at the
mm,
last minute, we can't do it. Now we're not going to be able to stay. And we're trying to find additional space, and space is, it's not that it's at a premium, because at that time a lot of people had left, but there's no built out space that's going to be able to help us, and we're going to have to get built out space. So understanding a lot of things with regard to build outs, we ended up moving to temporary space, and then 2 months later had to move to our permanent space. There's really nothing I could do about that. I had done a
mm-hmm.
lot of moves in the past, so I was really good on the efficiency of a move and how I wanted to play things out. What I was not good about is understanding, since I was not in that office, how much stuff really needed to go until I got
Mm,
up there. And I know part of it was COVID and us not flying and being able to go, but really understanding the stuff that needed to go until a few weeks before we were moving to where we had a full file room, and now we were going to have no file room because nobody was
ah,
using the file room. So all those
right.
boxes were going to have to go off site. And I really thought that things were moving, and that's on me, they were not moving. And just being able to go back and do that over again, which I actually had the opportunity to do when we were in Vegas. We had contingency plans set up because the same thing happened. The building actually went into bankruptcy in Vegas. And
Wow.
it's like, okay, now we're not going to be able to stay here either because nothing was moving forward. And
Mm,
so we had like Regis space that was like just in case. And then we
mm,
actually were able to sublease from another law firm that was in the building that had separate space. And so we
wow.
ended up moving into that, but but I knew so much more from what had happened in Walnut Creek. Fast forward 18 months later and us doing this, I'm like, oh, I've been here before.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
what we need to do this time. I need to go there a few more times and understand completely what's there and what needs to be gotten rid of, because I just didn't, it's all my fault. I just didn't understand fully and should have. So just for anybody listening, just trying really to understand, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're changing, being able to fully understand and really think about the things that you might not know that you think you know.
That's great advice. Yeah. And there's always something that you haven't done as long
Mhm.
as you do this. I get that. Yeah. I had to chuckle about the comment about the nobody's using the file room
Oh
because
yeah.
one of my partners appropriated a big part of the file room for his portable wine cellar.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, if you gotta pay rent on it anyway,
Yeah, exactly.
then why not? Right?
Exactly. So we're coming up on the hour. We've got a few more minutes, but tell me about a quick win that you've had that surprised you and how much it was impacted the firm, and than a long-term strategy that's paying off for you?
I think that everybody should be looking at AI.
Mm,
And I can't even quantify how many quick wins I have had recently. Now, look, you're not going to stick people's names and all of their information out on the internet and chat GPT, but you can definitely have it write a pretty decent email that you're going to send out that's quick, write a potential policy for like dress code, or at least give you
yeah,
ideas. If you're updating policy, if you're updating procedures, one of the things that we would just worked on as a management team is what we're going to use as our theme for next year. And we decided that it was going to be on future ready, innovating together. And it could be from a technology standpoint, an efficiency standpoint, whatever it is. But I definitely used AI to get me a lot of different ideas to start us brainstorming. That's what I would
nice.
think about, is
So
where to brainstorm.
are you using AI at all for finance? Like
I
like Copilot in Excel or anything like that?
I have tried to use it a couple of times in Excel. I have
Mm.
it, and I've tried to use it, but apparently I'm not doing it right. I need education,
Ah,
because it's not giving me what I need, which means I'm just not doing it right. I know that they're still working on the Excel part, but I think I need education on that. That's big for
okay.
me and on my 2025 to-do list.
Well, next month we've got Dennis Garcia from Microsoft in
Perfect.
one of our webinars. So you can, I'm hoping he can educate all of us because he's like
I need that.
chief guinea pig for Copilot.
Hmm.
Um, so in terms, so the transformations you've talked about, I'm sure you had measurable outcomes in mind for those. So what kind of KPIs have you been using, and what sort of what sort of data or numbers can you share that would highlight how much these changes have mattered to the law firm?
I think whenever you come into a place, if you really do look at efficiencies and you really do look at the numbers, you're always worried about. There's a lot of low hanging fruit. I've always found there's a lot of low hanging fruit, and there becomes less and less and less that you
Hmm.
can get to. But just looking at things, I do zero based budgeting, so I definitely do like line item by line item every year with the controller, and we go through things. But to just look at where are you spending your money, like your legal research. And how are you spending your money? When I got here, we had Lexus and Westlaw. And I'm like, but do
Ah,
we need them? And how do we need them? Who's using it? And I found there was only a couple of people using Lexus at the time, and we converted everything to Westlaw and saved like $120,000. I mean,
hmm
you just
hmm
stuff like that. And then the people, never, ever, ever, with every single time, if you could always look at when somebody leaves, look at it and say, do we need a person back in this spot? Is this the type of person that we needed? What type of skill set do you need? And we have found big numbers and stuff like that, being
hmm
fully understanding who's utilized and who's not utilized and going into all of that. So the people and the space are the biggest numbers, but we've also found a lot of money in just always trying to look at the technology and what we're using and how we're using it.
Makes a lot of sense. Yes. So one last question at the as we come up on the hour, and I haven't seen any questions in the chat. So this can be the finale.
Okay.
What advice would you give to administrators or partners who are just starting to look at efficiency improvements in their own firms? Where do you start?
I try to start in like potentially like if you can, a high impact area, like such as client billing or collections.
Hmm.
And always looking at those work allocations, case management, talent management, making sure that employees are engaged. Look, finding employees that are like that care. I always consider that that's like half the battle, right? At least.
Mm,
But
that's a
finding
great point.
asking great questions in your interviews with regard to, you know, like talent management, like if you're looking at people who are team players, you can ask that question, but trying to come up with some insightful questions that are going to get you the answers that you need to understand if this is going to be the right person. And look, we don't always make the right hires, but we do a way better job of it now. And it's huge to pay money to try to find people, and especially if you're looking at associates and then they end up leaving anyway. And now you've got all the downtime and all the stuff that goes along with that. So
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
So Lisa, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed talking with you for the last hour. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you too, Gary. I liked it. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully if anybody has any questions, they could always reach out to us and ask us. Always here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For the audience, you should look for an email which will include more resources for you. So the slides in the recording, the best in class webinar series brochure, the law firm financial report card, and how to sign up for our best in class financial community at leanlaw.co/learn. So thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you next time, and thanks for joining the webinar. We are adjourned.
Thank you.